the void, we hear the word. We lose ourselves, but we find it all. 'Cause we are the ones that wanna play. Always wanna go, but you never wanna stay. And we are the ones that wanna choose. Always wanna play, but you never wanna lose. Aerials in the sky when you lose my.
Woo! I'm back. Gonna play for you some 9/11 Truth for Grown-Ups from the Dawson Fitzgerald series. A little bit of dramasphere, though. Something I gotta address later. By the way, it is August 25th. You can see that on the Get Triggered calendar. In Japan, it's 25th anyway. So, we're gonna be talking about 9/11 Truth for most of this video, but there is a little something that went on that, you know, so many people have bothered me to respond to that, yes, you have manipulated me into doing this, so I'll get into that.
Loud Agreed Martin, proud producer and proprietor, patriotic projectile party poppers. Got some uppity brown people making trouble for your empire? Replace them with a charred freighter and a cloud of white smoke. So remember, if your next geostrategic boondoggle's going awry, don't call us, we'll call you.
Gonna play something for you, then I gotta respond to this. But this was Nick and Steven, Destiny, whatever, who have been trying to talk about 9/11, which is frustrating for someone like me to watch. It's like watching a woman put together furniture. Neither one of them know what they're talking about. But whatever, I'm glad they're, you know, still keeping the discussion alive. But here's what they said about me, and I'll reply.
Have you ever talked to Ryan Dawson?
Yeah, we don't like each other.
Why do all of you guys hate each other?
He's liberal, dude. He's a liberal
How is
atheist.
he a liberal? Oh, because he's an atheist.
Well, he's an atheist and he's a liberal. He's a bleeding heart liberal who just happens to hate
Isn't he
Israel.
like a full-on, is he into that race realism shit or whatever?
No. Well, yeah, no, I don't think he is.
But he hates Jews a lot. You guys can't bond over that?
He hates Israel. He doesn't hate Jews.
Oh,
and I don't hate
shit.
and I don't, not that I hate Jews. Okay, I love Jews, but
uh-oh.
But you know, they're all going to hell. Other than that,
do you have any political figures that you're like friends with?
The irony of Nick sitting next to a hyper liberal and saying, well, he's a liberal, and Steven saying, well, he's a race realist, right? While he's sitting next to Nick, who actually is. But I will give Fuentes credit. He told the truth. He said, no, he's not, because I am not. And he says, doesn't he hate Jews? No, he doesn't hate Jews. He hates Israel. Thank you, Nick, because that is accurate. I'm not a race realist. I actually argue with race realists. I've argued with all the same people Destiny has on Heel Turn and Stryker and all those people about that topic. Every time I was on Ethan Ralph, no matter what it was, I'd have some morons call in and want to argue about race. And, yeah, Israel's not the Jews. Duh. One's an ethnicity, one's a country. So, props to Nick. I mean, he thinks I'm a liberal, which is not accurate, but it's, you know, he's not lying. I think he actually thinks that. I don't know what that's based on. It's defamatory to just nonchalantly throw out, well, this guy's a Jew hater. He blames everything on the Jews. That is a career-ending. You know, if you're in a university, you get thrown out. That kind of accusation, you're basically saying this guy's a Nazi, which is baffling if he's not just grifting. I can't tell. Because in the past, Destiny said, hey, you ought to argue in good faith. He's criticized Vouch for doing stuff like that. Don't just bash low-hanging fruit like Shapiro or something, right? Why don't you engage with somebody that's well-versed on the issues? When you call someone a Nazi, that's a conversation ender. Never in my life have I espoused anything promoting white supremacy, white separatism, Nazism, anything like that. What people do is they conflate criticism of Israel with criticism of Jews. But the only two groups that think of Jews as a race are racist Nazis and Zionists. So then there was this clip where, well, I'll let you see.
Why is my chat saying you're scared of Ryan Dawson?
I can debate Dawson, but the thing is he is probably one of the most out there conspiracy dudes. So I would have to start reading like every single name. Like, for instance, in the beginning, it was like 3 different people were either fired or hired like in the week before. And I would probably have to read on every single one of those people because he's like the most elaborate like Jew conspiracy guy on the internet. Like, I'm pretty sure he's like on Bitchute. He's like banned off everything. And he's got like reasons for why the Jews are behind every single conceivable ill in society.
No, just Israel. He's a
Or
liberal.
Israel,
He's a
sorry,
liberal
yeah.
like you. He's an atheist.
Oh, yeah?
He only hates Israel because he thinks Israel kills Palestinians or something, and he's like an American Indian, so he feels kinship with the Palestinians. I don't care about Palestinians or Indians.
The guy in the corner is Sneeko or Schneeko. I've actually seen him on TikTok. My son showed me some of his videos, which I shared on Telegram a couple weeks ago. No problem with that guy at all. He's just asking questions. Not a big deal. Props again to Nick for keeping it honest. I mean, at least he knows something about me. Destiny doesn't know anything, or he's lying on purpose. Okay? I'm not the most far out there 9/11 thing. Are you kidding me? There are people denying airplanes, talking about holograms and do weapons. That's the far out there stuff. You don't have a clue what my opinion on 9/11 is. Not a clue. And you don't know anything about me. And I not blame everything on the Jews. Okay? Again, Israel is a state, and they do a lot of bad things. So do a lot of other states. And you can cherry pick stuff. I mean, I'm talking about Ukraine. I've been talking about China, Taiwan. You pick something that's, it's not just Israel. But I'm not going to skip them either. But it has nothing to do with religion or ethnicity or race. Nothing. Jewish supremacy is a toxic supremacist ideology, just like any other espoused racial supremacist clique. And I am completely against that, but you cannot conflate that with a group in general. Again, Nick called me a liberal. I'm not sure what policy I'm a liberal on. Destiny again, though. Always way out there. This is a cope. I'm glad you agreed that you'll do a debate, though. I mean, fine with me. You can prep all you want. 20 hours, 200 hours. It's not going to matter. You shouldn't assume that you're going to disagree, though. Because you have no idea at all what I'm going to say. I think you're assuming that I'm going to blame an ethnic group or act like Al-Qaeda isn't real or whatever nonsense out there in the 9/11 kook movement. Let me fill you in on something. Nobody has debunked the 9/11 kook movement and dealt with those people more than I have. Nobody has dunked on Loose Chains and Alex Jones and AE 9/11, all that, more than me. Ask around. They hate me. That's the kookification of that issue, and that happens on a lot of things, right? You'll get COVID-19. There are nuanced positions on that. Maybe we didn't need to put masks on children, but no. You're not allowed to discuss that at all, or you're a virus denier, right? That is dismissive rhetoric. Lumping anyone in, oh, you don't agree with this? Well, you're a Q-tard, or you're this, you're that. That's just arguing in bad faith. You're categorizing people by the most extreme element. Nothing's worse than having an idiot argue on your behalf. And to be honest, I couldn't get through the 9/11 discussion and I didn't need to, because the movie they were citing was the new Pearl Harbor film, which is just ridiculous and dumb. I would actually agree with Destiny on most of the points, but it's like Nick is right to be skeptical of the government and some of the television narratives about September 11th, like they hate us for our freedoms. That's not the motivation for Al-Qaeda. So that's okay. But that movie is just stupid. And, you know, I don't agree with that either. But instead of thinking hostile and thinking, oh, I'm going to need all these hours to prep for this debate, which you know you're not going to do, why don't you hear what I have to say first and see whether or not you even disagree? Because I think if I had even 15 minutes to start explaining it to you, that you might end up agreeing. And the more you research it, the more you're going to come my way. I'm not one of these kooks. I can't stand those people. I get harassed by them constantly because I say an airplane hit the Pentagon. Like, they can't handle that. But it obviously did. So you don't know what you're talking about, and you should stop being defamatory. Stop alluding to me as a race realist. When I've argued with David Duke, I've argued with Eric Stryker, I've argued with the heel turn people. You don't know what you're talking about. I argued with Nick, even. He had a nice L in his debate. I think you're mad because you lost the debate on call out. And look, dude, I wasn't trying to dunk on you or anything. I didn't even know who you were. I thought it was very civil. I thought maybe you could have learned something. But if you're egotistical, you're like, you didn't learn anything. You're just like mad because he made you look bad or something. I did not make you look bad. You made you look bad. You didn't know anything about Syria. You don't know anything about foreign policy. And apparently you didn't learn anything. Right? You said, oh, he takes these fringe things. Like, I quoted to you the Defense Intelligence Agency. I quoted to you our own government's assessments. These aren't fringy anything. Okay? And then if you go look at the conclusions of the gas attacks, turns out I was right. That's on you, dude. And it's not my fault that a bunch of people dunked on you. You have a lot of enemies that saw you lose a debate and they got all ha-ha Destiny and they took a little victory lap that they had nothing to do with. But I was not trying to be mean. I wasn't trying to make you look stupid. I thought we had a nice civil discussion. You got into an area you didn't know about, so I just explained it to you. And you were perfectly free to look into what I was saying, come back the next day, the next week, whatever, and said, he said this, but this. But you didn't. And you can't. Because everything I said was accurate. I don't think you can prepare for a 9/11 debate when you don't know my opinion. And I would advise you to wait and see what I have to say, because I don't think you're going to disagree. I really don't. I don't think Nick's going to disagree. I'm going to give Nick a lot better ammo. Now, I'm much more aligned with Fuentes' conservative values than I am with Destiny's liberal values. But I'm not that ideological. I'm a libertarian, a big Ron Paul fan. And I can find things said by either one of them that I can agree with. I'm very, I find the race realist stuff repugnant, but I feel like you should be allowed to discuss it. You should be allowed to have free speech. I think sunshine is the best policy. And Nick should be allowed to say that. It's not, who cares what he says? He should be allowed to explore that avenue. And maybe someone like me could change his mind. What happens when you create echo chambers, though, is people are like going to their church. Ideology is secular religion. They go in, they're getting their opinion reinforced. There's this weird thing that's happened with social media where opinions outweigh deeds, right? You just got to have the right opinions on all these things. And a lot of people, pick things without really looking into it at all. But anyway, I started this video to show you some 9/11 truth for grown-ups. And I have to add the for grown-ups part because the kook movement is just so far out there, far gone. The kooks have won, right? You get alarmists too, right? It's not just the denier camp, like virus deniers, airplane deniers. You get the climate change alarmists. That doesn't mean there's no climate change, but when you say silly stuff like the earth is gone in 12 years, you're not helping your side. Don't exaggerate in either direction. Try to be as accurate as possible. When you go off in the right field with these things, you're doing a disservice, right? Same with religion, too. I mean, nothing wrecks a religion harder than some hardcore evangelist is saying everybody else is going to hell. Something Nick mentioned, all the Jews are going to hell or whatever he said. You're not going to win over much with that kind of rhetoric. Okay? Anyway, here is a video that was deleted from YouTube because, you know, that's what happens if you're a threat to the system, about the dry run on 9/11, and that will be followed by a video of myself and Adams Fitzgerald, another great researcher, discussing a portion of September 11th, which is part of a long series, and he and I are going to be recording this week and next week, going over each of the hijacker cells, and yes, they're real, and explaining what happened, where the fails were, what we think was incompetence or worse. This is the kind of discussion that needs to happen. This sort of hostility, blood sport mentality of like, you know, it's me versus so-and-so. Remove your ego from the discussion. This isn't a battle of who's going to win. Okay? It shouldn't be. The point of having these discussions is to find out what's right, not who's right. It doesn't matter who's right. And if you're open-minded, you should be willing to hear from somebody who's very informed on an issue. And you also admit when you don't know something, know that you don't know. And go, okay, I'll listen to that. And then I'm going to check it. And then I'm going to ask other people to check it. And then you either retain it or you don't. But that's how you move forward in fact-checking, actual fact-checking, to figure out what happened. You don't pick a conclusion and then work backwards. You're not supposed to say, well, this is what I think, and now I'm going to look for ways to prove it. It's supposed to be the other way around. It's like, I don't know what to think. I'm going to look at all the evidence and then form a conclusion. And then I'm going to try and falsify that conclusion the best I can. And then you might falsify some things and you revise. And then over time, you get a better and better, more airtight conclusion with the best evidence. That's how it's supposed to go. It's sophomoric and adolescence to be like, yeah, if I prep, I'm going to debate this. And, you know, he's going to say this and that. And I'm like, dude, you don't have a clue. I'm telling you that now. You can prep all you want. It won't matter. It's not going to matter. I can tell you, like with 9/11 kooks, I can finish their sentence for them. I've heard all the lines. No, Bill never fell from fire. Blah, 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 blah. I know everything they're going to say. And look, I'm on your side with that. I don't like those arguments. And those people are dogmatic. And they don't listen to you anyway. I'm not one of those people. I'm not alt-right. I'm not racist. I'm not any of the crap you've heard. I have a very nuanced and adult position on 9/11. And a lot of academics agree with me on it. And it's nothing way out there at all. So why don't you let me speak for myself instead of painting the picture you want so you can knock it down. Okay, now let's talk about September 11th.
Back in 1999, two men from Saudi Arabia, we'll call them Mach and Hash for simplicity, forced a plane bound for Washington to ground itself in Ohio, where the men were arrested. Both men had trained at al-Qaeda camps in Afghanistan. Both were in contact with al-Qaeda operatives as well as the Saudi government, and both had their plane tickets paid for by the Saudi government. They tried multiple times to enter the cockpit, and their excuse to the FBI was, "We thought it was the bathroom." Even though they had asked their stewardess where the bathroom was and she directed them to the back of the plane, they go to the front of they knew it was the cockpit. But that was a good enough excuse because the FBI let them go. Later, another al-Qaeda suspect under investigation was discovered driving Mach's car. Why did he have his car? Perhaps because this Arizona al-Qaeda recruiter is who drove them to the airport the day they got on the flight where they ended up getting arrested for trying to enter the cockpit. Robert Mueller of the FBI, even after learning all about that, and the Al-Qaeda training camps and contact with operational level operatives, was not interested in investigating or even interviewing these men. All they did was a dry one of 9/11. Who'd want to talk to them about that? Saudi Arabia was laundering money through California mosque, provided housing and transportation and lived with or next to, and provided money to, at least 3 Al-Qaeda hijackers. Israel knew, for they too lived next to and helped hijackers move around, literally. It would not be the first time that Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the United States covertly supported Al-Qaeda, nor would it be the last. It's happening right now.
Well, I don't know if you're watching this on Odysee or not. I mean, it's awesome that they're pro free speech, but for me, it buffers like every few seconds and it's just unwatchable, which sucks. You can Shekelchat on there or Entropy. I'm going to look up Entropy right now. Looks empty. Hooray. It is not muted. Eat a dick. Well, I will play the Fitzgerald part. It is not muted. It's not. There's something wrong with it. I don't know why. It was never muted. Fucking potheads to get in there and be like, oh my god, it didn't talk for a second. Look, I'm not even going to explain it to you. Okay, so this is Fitzgerald and I. If you have any 9/11 questions, you should type them right now. If you are going to... I'm glad it's fine in Scandinavia. It is not... Dude, it was not fucking muted. There is a lag time. I live in Japan. Odysee sucks. There's some space between when I move them out. I'm not arguing with you idiots about this. If you have a question about 9/11, I will answer it. If you weirdos, you SJWs and alt-rights are obsessed with race realism, that's all you ever want to talk about is race, go talk to each other. I've addressed that 1,000 times. I am not fucking interested in re-explaining that again. I agree with free speech. I think it's perfectly fine to be like, oh, why did Europeans disproportionately invent a bunch of stuff? Okay, go read some Thomas Sowell. Get back to me. I'm not going to derail every video I do. Listen to me. People died on September 11th. Thousands. It's a very serious issue. This is not entertainment for me. You know, victims, families of the victims watch my videos. They listen to me. No one wants to hear about, your theories on race or whatever. Get a life. Okay? We will do dedicated videos on that topic and have before. But you cannot pipe in with that on every video. You're getting to be as bad as the Penatards, who, they all think I mislit the Pentagon. Any video I did, that's all they want to talk about. I could be talking about Syria, they want to talk about that. You want to talk about Venezuela, they want to talk about that. And then it's weird. Now I'm finally talking about 9/11, and you want to talk about race. Get bent. Okay, yeah, I called it repugnant. Get a life. I'm not going to stop and explain all this stuff over and over again. It is wrong to judge an individual by a category. This is common sense. I have an identical twin brother. Exact same DNA. We think very differently on many things. How did that happen? Probably because your ideology, your language, all that stuff is software, not hardware. Okay? You can take any baby and raise them to believe or speak in any language you want. It's not intrinsic to them. It doesn't matter how much overlap there is. Everybody in Japan speaks Japanese. That's not because of their genes. It's because they're raised to speak Japanese. Okay, well, you have this political opinion or that. That's on you. That's not part of your genes or your biology. It's totally up to the individual. That's not hardware. Hardware is, what color your eyes are, how tall you are, which is actually to an extent is your diet as well. But to attribute someone's political ideology, philosophy, religion, or any of that stuff to race is ridiculous. Because it just isn't. You go, this race or that votes this way. Yeah, people tend to vote themselves money if they can. It's, in their own interest. It's not, whatever. I'm not re-explaining this again. I'm not doing it. It is 2 weeks before 9/11, right? We're coming up on the anniversary of Bernard Carrick going to Israel, getting a $250,000 loan through an intermediary, Steve Witkoff from Erstein Wertheimer, richest man in Israel, billionaire, on the board of governors of the JA, who hired Paul Kurtzberg, right? Admitted it in the FBI files in their interrogations, right? If you don't know what I'm talking about right now, that's on you. Okay? I'm not interested in talking about what building looked like it fell too fast. Shut up. That is such weak sauce argument. I don't care. 5 from Hexagon Tony. Thank you for popping the cherry, by the way. Says, what country benefited the most from 9/11? No country really no country, like if you're talking about national interest, really benefited from 9/11. The MIC benefited. I guess if you include the Iraq War, which it does relate to 9/11, because they said senior Iraqi officials gave anthrax to Al Qaeda in Prague. Then Israel benefited from 9/11 because they ended up getting 3/4 of their oil from the Kurdish region of Iraq after the occupation and invasion of Iraq based on false pretext of WMDs that didn't exist, and they knew didn't exist. They lied about it, Navir forgeries, and y'all have all heard it. William Sapphire, Judith Miller, all that stuff. They lied. It was not incompetence. It was conscious lies. So Israel benefited for the RAPI scan, body scanners in the airport, all this stuff. There are a lot of people that, it's not like they did 9/11, but it's like they used it to profiteer. Like, oh yeah, when everybody's scared, let's sell these, But as far as countries go, I mean, there's a big L for everybody. The U.S. wasted trillions of dollars chasing ghosts. They went after Al Qaeda, which is an organization they created in the first place. Made them stronger than they've ever been. I guess in the Iraq War, Iran took over a lot of Iraq, but it was not in anybody's national interest. Not 9/11. It's how 9/11 got used. That benefited the Israelis. To an extent, the Saudis, I mean, they did get what they wanted. The U.S. did pull their bases out of the Holy Lands, which is one of bin Laden's demands. But yeah, it was more like how it benefited personal commercial interests than state interest. And if you still think that, like, real politics is dead. If you still think states, especially the United States, is acting in national interest, you're just lost. It's been for a while about select commercial interests. Big pharma, which relates to big ag, the weapons industry, energy industries, right? And the Iraq War and the fallout from 9/11 did not benefit the United States at all. It actually went against their interest. But if you look at the people lying about Iraq, these neocons, they got what they wanted. They got a nation destroyed that had already suffered under sanctions, with hundreds of thousands of people dying, many of them children. Think about that for a second. Digest that factoid. Hundreds of thousands of innocent Iraqi children and babies starved to death because of U.S. sanctions. And they were complying with the weapons inspectors. They didn't have weapons of mass destruction. The U.S. did, which they used. Israel was guilty of everything they accused Iraq of. And all they got was more money. But that's how that relationship is. U.S. went against their own interests, constantly doing that. They weren't alone in doing that. See some other questions, but you got a Shekel chat if you want them answered. Thanks to Hex and Tony for that. I'll look at Entropy real quick. DJ Cogdale for 3 says, VK was buffering every few seconds just now. I switched to Odysee and it's surprisingly smooth right now. Well, that's good to know. It's buffering a lot on my end, but look, the video, if you're having a hard time watching it live, just wait. It'll get rendered. It'll be all smooth later, and you can just watch it on Rumble or Odysee, whatever. I will also put it on Bitchute. I think it'll be smooth on VK too. It's just when it's live, none of these companies can really handle it. Maybe Rumble can. I don't know. You can check it out on Rumble. They do have a lot of money, but you know, it's not YouTube, and which sucks. But people like me get banned on YouTube because of irresponsible statements by others, you know, that conflate anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism, where, you know, opposition to Salafist Wahhabi groups and saying, oh, you hate the Muslims, which is ridiculous. It's been the better part of my life defending people who happen to be Muslim. That's not why I'm doing it. I do it because they're people, but defending Iraq, defending Lebanon, defending Palestine, defending Iran. You know, and I know there are also Christians that live in Palestine and all those countries. It's not like monolithic, but you know what I'm saying, majority. Hex Tony for 5 says, I've seen more and more clipping videos of your rants, Rye. I just want to remind those that are doing that to keep it up, and those that have a TikTok downloads start clipping ANC videos. ANC for anti-neocons. Shout out to Reed Coverdale for shouting out ANC in that conference he spoke at. Oh, that's great. I haven't got to see all that yet. But, you know, we got a 4 Horsemen coming up with Reed and Jackman. And, well, I'll let them announce the guest. But pretty based, heavy metal guy. So you've definitely heard of this person. So, yep. And props to all the people working in New Hampshire, you know, on the Free State Project. I think that's excellent. And, you know, grassroots, real grassroots, that's where it's at. Like, a lot of all the things we hate in government, right or left, like most people, right or left, they don't like corporate welfare, right? Nobody likes banker bailouts or giving money to Lotta Greed Martin. I don't think, except the people that work there. There's a lot of common ground. And nobody likes having their phone spied on or something, that I don't think are really partisan things. But they get you talking about abortion or gender or whatever, and you're missing a lot of things that I think most of the country could be unified on and put an end to. Cheap plug, Separation of Business and State. You can get that book on Amazon. I went through it. I did a nice interview with James Corbett Report, right after it came out. There's a lot of things. You can't even tell what my political stance is by reading that book. It's like, look, these are all issues that I think almost everyone could get behind, that nobody likes, yet they go on and on. Insider trading in DC and stuff, nobody likes that, but that, you know, it keeps happening. Things we could clean up. Hexkin again, sorry to derail 9/11. Let's get back to that. What's your opinion on the biggest cringe 9/11 myth? No Pentagon allowed. Well, the missile Pentagon thing is one of the dumbest. That's a hard question. What's the biggest cringe 9/11 myth? Man, they're all bad. Like, but even though you said it's not allowed, I gotta say the Pentagon thing's the worst, because if you don't think there are phone calls, if you don't think there's a plane, if you erase all that, then you don't have Cheney's stand down order. You don't have the hijackers on that plane with a paper trail back at the Saudis. All that disappears, right? And it's just stupid. You sound crazy. I don't know. That's a bad one. The the bomb in every window crowd, all that. I don't know. You know, the first 9/11 attack was actually in the 90s, where a guy ran into a tree right next to the White House with a plane. I think it was in 96. Holograms are bad. I don't think that's as bad because that's so stupid that no one buys into it. Same with the direct energy weapons. I like to know how there's a non-energy weapon, but whatever. It's like, it's kinetic energy. I'm like, yeah, okay. The stuff that's really far-fetched is not as damaging as the stuff that's in the middle, I feel like. The half-planar crowd is more annoying than the no-planar crowd, because the no-planar crowd are just too silly. You know what I mean? You're really scraping the bottom of the barrel with those people. Wasn't there a truck bombing WCC 90s? Yeah, 1993 Ryder truck bombing. I mean, of course, we've been over that. I guess, you know, I don't know how old the people are who I'm talking to. If you weren't alive in 93, they never made that comparison. Did you notice that? They kept comparing it to Pearl Harbor, not the 1993 World Trade Center attack with a truck bomb with Ramzi Youssef, right? Whose uncle is a 9/11 plotter. Like, that should have been the immediate go-to connection, though. They didn't want to revisit that because it was so bad. I mean, they had boxes of documents that easily could have prevented that. They had a guy on the inside even. And yeah, you've heard me say it a million times. Anyway, would you like to get to Adam Fitzgerald and I's talk about September 11th starting actually in 1999? That's where you have to begin. You were 7 in 93, so you weren't paying attention. Well, you know, then forgiveness. EHC62166 for a Dead Lincoln says, Ryan, have you researched those knife wielders on buses? First 10 hours of 9/11 seems like vans could be disinfo too. Seems you're confident though. Thanks for your research. The vans are not disinfo. The King Street thing is, or could be. But no, that's well documented by our own FBI about urban moving systems and all that. That's not disinformation. And there was a truck bomb attack in 1993. Don't confuse that with 2001. There was a van with traces of explosives. There was a van with an explosive device, according to the police and firemen, on 9/11 in the parking garage. They took out of the Church of Dades. So there is some evidence for that. And there was the false call about Palestinian bomb makers at the airport mixing a bomb and stuff like that. Those are all true things, but it's kind of setting the bar too high. I'll explain all that later. Hexkin says Dead Lincoln is the only Lincoln I like. Yeah. Liz Cheney compared herself to Lincoln as a woman. As much as I don't like Lincoln, I mean the actual Lincoln, not the mythologized, you know, Lincoln that ended slavery. Ending slavery is a very good thing. That's not what he set out to do. He's way more intelligent than Liz Cheney. Lincoln was. I mean, you can like him, dislike him, but he was not a dumb person. Evil, yeah. I mean, but he's kind of a man of his times. Like, oh, genociding Indians and, you know, racial segregation, all that was normal. And that was, you know, how it was the 1850s and 60s. It's hard to get above your own culture. All right, so I'm going to talk to Fitzgerald about an hour and a half. If it's boring, you know, if it's not Alex Jones, like, oh, there's a bomb and blah, 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 no building ever fell from fire in Madrid and blah, 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 blah. You know, too bad. We are going to be factual and we're open to disagreement. The whole purpose of these talks is to continually shave it down Zen style to figure out what's the most concrete, what happened. Now, there were people with plane tickets purchased by the Saudi government that tried to break into a cockpit, kind of did a little dry run in 9/11. They were associated to Al-Qaeda, training camps in Afghanistan, all of that. So as you saw, I guess in this video, I did a little animation for it and all that, but Fitzgerald and I are about to break that down way more deeply. It is pre-recorded. It's because, you know, we did this a while ago. we're doing a series, and for whatever reason, people are only interested in 9/11 in a couple weeks right before the anniversary of 9/11. So it is what it is. I'm glad Nick and Destiny and Sneeko are, interested in the topic. I wish they're more informed on it, and I'm happy to join the panel, not in a adversarial way. I don't need to dunk on anyone. I'm not trying to be like, confrontational. It doesn't even have to be a debate. I don't think that would be good because they wouldn't even know what to ask. I don't know. I'm trying not to be a dick about this, but it's like their level of knowledge in 9/11 is not really good. And I'm glad the Destiny can dunk on the, obvious, moronic takes on 9/11. Cool. But man, if you just want your audience to hear, the grown-up version, then I'm happy to come on. I'm happy to bring Fitzgerald with me, or Nelson Martin, or any of the real researchers in 9/11. If all you've ever heard is Jonestown and Loose Change and Richard Gage, then come on. That's the idiot box, right? Jones denies school shootings. He's thought there were earthquake machines. He microwaves $20 bills. And I don't think he's that dumb. He did it on purpose because he's grifting. And now he's been sued by the Sandy Hook families, and so is Fitzgerald. He's one of those 9/11 cookers that says there's miniature nukes. And you asked earlier, one of the dumbest myths, that one, the mini nukes, a nuclear bomb that takes down 3 buildings, one at a time. That's got to be up there. Missile hitting building 6. I've heard that's a Chris Bolin take. That's pretty stupid. It's hard to compare, and it's like, none of that disinfo would have got the time of day, but social media, they amplify the really stupid takes, and they straight up censor anything accurate. Someone says teaching morons is the real challenge. Well, listen, Nick and Steve are not morons. They're not at all. These are intelligent guys. They're ignorant, and there's a huge difference between ignorance and stupidity. They could learn this in a day if someone told them the right information. But, you try and learn 9/11 20 years late, there's so much disinformation out there. It's like trying to learn about JFK. You can't. It's just, the ether of stupid is overwhelming. You try to Google about 9/11, forget about it. Forget about it. It's just one dumb take after another, which is sad. And, I had a foothold for a little while in there, War by Deception and all that. But, yeah, they removed all my stuff. And on everything. And that's the cancel culture. And a lot of people are getting it now. I mean, look at all the people that got banned over their opinions on COVID-19. And then the CDC comes out and goes, yeah, guess what? Oops. Right? Are they going to pull a reversal and add all this back? No. Right? And even if they were wrong, so just let them be wrong. You don't have to tank their channel. I know Nick's been banned on a lot of things, almost everything. And Destiny lost a Twitch channel. It was a huge channel. I'm sure it made a lot of money. And it was like you said the wrong thing one time, and he wasn't even like making that argument. He was just like mentioning and debunking it, whatever. They didn't care, and they just ganked it from him. And that's, I totally disagree with that. I disagree with banning anybody unless you are actually advocating violence or breaking the law. Your opinion on whatever shouldn't matter. You should be able to have free speech. And we don't. And we never really have. That's in the Constitution, like private company, man. Nope. Because these companies all have terms of service agreements. It's a contract. You're a partner with YouTube, right? And they say, as long as you don't break these written rules, we're not going to ban you. You can only be banned if you're advocating violence toward this group or that group, da-da-da-da. That's hate speech, right? As it's written. However, there's a whole bunch of unwritten rules. They say, well, If you give the opinion on Ukraine we don't like, you're gone. You give an opinion on COVID we don't like, you're gone. You give an opinion on the Middle East we don't like, you're gone. You know, you give an opinion about the election we don't like, you're gone. Now, you could talk about conspiracy theories of 2016, how Russia hacked the election all day. But if you did that about 2020, and I'm not saying that's right, but if you did, you were banned, right? So one can be questioned, the other cannot, right? And you know how left-leaning social media is. And it's not even like normal left. It's way out there, alphabet people left, right? Which makes Democrats look really bad. They weren't like that when I was growing up. Being a Democrat wasn't crazy. It's getting to be, or it's portrayed as such because of, you know, the birthday abortion crowd and all that. I mean, that's insane. I mean, that, whatever. Okay. Yeah, like the gender stuff. Pfft. Men are men, women are women. If you want to transition, fine, whatever. But God, if you even say like, you know, maybe men shouldn't play women's sports, dude, you're gonna get the most visceral attack. As if you just, you know, peed on baby Jesus or something. I don't care what your opinions are on that. You should be able to voice them. If you don't have discussions on this, what do voiceless people do? They act up, sometimes violently. You're not, if you don't allow that pressure valve to let people at least speak about things and disagree, then some of them are going to snap. It's pressure release. Just let them vent. Okay, there's some people like only 100 people saw what they said. So what? You know, the best way to squash a bad idea is with a better idea. But we don't have an even playing field, and that's what happens on 9/11. The kook movement is far greater. I didn't even know this thing was here. I'll move that away. It's too offensive. I mean, noobs should listen, but calling someone a noob makes them stop listening, right? I don't do this. Y'all all know I don't do the tech stuff. It's like, whatever. Thumbnail there. I didn't even look at it. What was I saying? Anyway, let's talk about September 11th in a serious way. Right after checking entropy. Oh, we had a couple. Well, let's get these. Stiegel 5's Canadian 25 says, keep up the good work, Ryan. Always informative with regards to 9/11. Was it really about profiteering and expansion of the American empire? Is it that simple? Well, no. I mean, from Al-Qaeda's perspective, it was revenge on the United States. But it's like Rahm Emanuel said, never let a crisis go to waste. So people took advantage of the event to profiteer. It's not like they orchestrated it all. They just, you know, that happened and then bam, Patriot Act, this, that, DHS, let's create new things. And also I think they feel like, oh, we got to do something. Show them, you know, we made a new organization and all this. But for the people on the planes, they weren't trying to help the U.S. profiteer. They were trying to kill Americans. They hit the financial center. They hit the Pentagon, right? The war room. They were trying to knock out the U.S.'s front teeth. Bin Laden's plan was to get the U.S. to overreact and get embroiled in the Middle East and have a war of attrition. And that's pretty much how it went. Yankee Carpetbagger says, hey, Ryan, what is your take on the student loan forgiveness given the DOE loan scam you wrote about in Separation? Yeah, they're talking about Department of Ed. Yeah, I have sympathy for people who are, you know, deeply in debt for bad decisions, for, you know, borrowing so much to go to college. There is the diminishing amount of returns there, though. But it's not fair to people who did pay off their loans for other people to just be forgiven and not have to pay. It's gonna, imagine if you got in all that debt and you worked your ass off for decades and paid it off. and now some people don't have to. That's not right. Like, what they ought to do is first get rid of guaranteed student loans so the price wouldn't be driven up so high. You know, if the colleges know that the government or the DOE is going to essentially subsidize the students, then they're going to raise their prices. And they did. I mean, because they don't care. It's government money. And the Department of Ed can borrow at a much smaller interest rate than what they loan out as, and they make money in the spread. I think they were the third or fourth largest corporation if they're not categorized as such. It was like Google and Apple, something, maybe Amazon, I'm not sure. And then it's Department of Education. I mean, they've made, well, on paper, they're owed at least an enormous amount of money pushing students into debt. And as someone about to enter college, they think, you know, it's worth, I need to go to college, or I can't do X, Y, Z, but I can't afford it unless I take this loan. And they just hope they push it down the road. But they're graduating with effectively a mortgage with no house, right? That's how much they owe, and yet they have no asset. And they'll be paying that off for a long time. And is it worth it? Depends on what you get your degree in and all that. And there are other benefits to college besides getting a job. I mean, it's the growth you have from the social experience and da-da-da-da, of course. But financially, it might not be worth it nowadays. It's a very specific decision. Depends on your state. Depends on the college. Depends on what you're doing. So I can't give you an answer what you ought to do or not. Something you got to figure out. But look, if it costs way more than you think you can pay, then you cannot have that thing. Okay? It'll be really nice to have this degree from this college. Well, you know, what if it's $100,000 and you don't have that? Then you don't get to do that. Like, that debt will be there. I think they're just trying to get votes. Like, we're going to forgive, they're just talking about it. Like, we're going to forgive you for college debt to get those people to vote for that party. And then they're probably not even going to do it. If they do, it's completely unfair to the people paid. Any other questions? Let me go back to Odysee. All right, I think I got them all. Okay. This is your intro class to September 11th, starting in 1999. We're going through it chronologically and by area. We felt like that was the best way to organize it. And again, I'm more than happy to go on a panel and explain things about September 11th or answer questions. I see zero reason why it has to be hostile or debate format, because, you know, I just don't see that as productive. Like, why don't you hear what I have to say, and then if you like vehemently disagree, go ahead and trash it. I don't care. Or then you can debate. But you shouldn't assume you know what I'm going to say without even looking at anything I've ever said. Okay? That's just wrong. All right. And again, props to Fuentes, who doesn't like me, for at least being honest about my positions and saying, no, he doesn't hate Jews. He hates Israel. No, he's not a race realist. You know, good for him. Stephen, I would ask you to be, you know, a little more cautious before you just trash somebody to 100,000 people, whatever, when you're just throwing out labels and stuff when you don't know, and you know you don't know. You shouldn't flippantly label somebody with these things that you've never talked to about it. You know, people are going to write trash about other people on the internet. So, I mean, I'm here. You have my Skype. I don't know. Be responsible. You're not vouch. You know, I didn't have any ill will toward Destiny at all. We had a debate, and I thought it was cordial and didn't even think about it afterward. And Nick, you know, we had a debate, and I was real, calm and soft because he was 19 years old, you know, and yeah, He advocated state genocide, whatever. That debate doesn't even count. He was basically a kid. He's improved enormously. He read Mersheimer. You can tell he's well read. He's I'm not saying for his age. I'm not one of these people like he does well. I think, however, some of this stuff is like the character Nick Fuentes and not his real. When he says he doesn't care about Palestinians or Indians, or whatever, I don't believe that. I don't. I think that's his brand or something, or he just like, a LARP or whatever, a lark. Excuse me, not a LARP. Just say stuff because it's edgy and funny and entertaining, or whatever. But I think if he's really a true Catholic, a Christian, then you got to care about everybody. Anyway, that's, who knows? Maybe he doesn't care. I think he does. Here is Fitzgerald. Bam. Okay, there it is. It's on Odysee now. There. Great. It's going through. It's live. It's on VK. It's on Odysee. I think it's even on Rumble. Finally. All right, I've got Adam Fitzgerald on the show to talk about September 11th, obviously. We're going to get into that. We have talked about this before. He, myself, and Nelson did a sort of reaction video debunking this really stupid video that some nobodies that aren't even worth naming put out when they were smearing all of us. And we did a show on the Four Horsemen with Reed Coverdale and Jackman about 9/11. It was hard, to squeeze that all in an hour or so. And guess what? That is the only YouTube video they have removed from Reed's channel, was the one where we talked about September 11th, which is something because there's umpteen zillion 9/11 videos on YouTube, but when you talk about it the grown-up way, when you do 9/11 truth for grown-ups, then they remove it, which is my theory. They amplify this kooky stuff on purpose to create a tar baby and guilt by association, and then, of course, they censor anything reasonable. So, here, oh, we got video this time. Cool. Now I got to go through and make sure Skype is still on. It's you are there. All right. Well, I can move these two pictures away. This is you. This is from Pug. We're gonna get into this. This is much easier actually seeing video because I won't talk over you as much when I can actually see a face to react to.
Yeah, man.
Here, I'll just put this here. Whatever. Bang. All right. So it is a big topic. Tough to tell where to start. I thought it'd be fun to just make fun of some of the kooks because people are going to go, oh my gosh, a 9/11 conspiracy? What are you, an airplane denier? Do you think the moon landing's fake? Nope. Hell, the official story is a conspiracy theory by definition, right? That Al-Qaeda planned this in caves in Afghanistan and did it all by themselves. That is also a conspiracy. But I'm going to go after the charlatans just real couple minutes, and then we'll just get into what happened. I don't want to spend too much time on what did not happen. It basically, all of that loose change and Richard Gage and the art student one, where they call it Decade of Deception, which my film's called Decades of Deception. They changed one letter and hijacked that. All those people are kooks. But Richard Gage is probably the most infamous of the kooks, and he had a 10-hour symposium just on the Pentagon, and I'd like to walk through some of the theories, and that being very generous with that word, of these charlatans. So you got to listen to that. Are you suffered through most of it, yeah?
Yeah, it was quite an experience. I had to do it because I'm the type of person that likes to look in the sun, even though it's bad for you. But leading off the conference was actually a well-known conspiracy theorist that everybody knows. He wrote the book, Le Pentgate Theory Mason.
Yeah, the original kook, the guy that started the entire...
first original.
The before loose change, because they did not come up with this missile hit the Pentagon canard. They didn't even make up their own lie. They just copied someone else's, and that is Mason's. He's the OG kook, what was the music video they made? The Pentagon attack or something. It had Chemical Brothers and Marilyn Manson. It went all through like high school and junior high school. Look at the lawn. Look at the hole. Okay, so what do you have to say?
Well,
blaming
just
Russia? No.
Well, you're close. Well, he had an hour and a half. Everybody had an hour and a half to speak. So
Wow.
just, that's a lot of time.
Yeah,
So
that's a lot of coke.
he proposes one theory. And the theory is that what made the damage at the Pentagon was a Russian warship was at the coast of it, off the coast of the Atlantic, shot 2 missiles at the Pentagon, which made a 16-foot hole.
Oh, yeah, a foreign warship from Russia, no less, shooting 2 missiles not only at America, but at the Pentagon, and it only makes a 16-foot hole. And they just happened to know 9/11 was happening at the same time that they decided to do this. His evidence for this was what?
Two anonymous Russian generals.
Really?
And he's been on the run since.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
He needs your money, right? But he got to come to this public symposium and tell all, right?
Yeah, it's hilarious because then he is an extra 30, 40 minutes to go through questions and answers, and people really had questions, like serious questions for him, like who allowed this? How did American military not know, and stuff like that. Well, after that, we went to theory B, and it was good old Barbara Honegger. Barbara Honegger proposes that a white plane crashes into the heliport, and at the same time it crashed into the heliport, a bomb went off outwardly, and that's what made the hole.
Yeah, she's the one that says the columns bend the wrong way. They don't. They're all bending as if something ran into them, because something did run into them, a plane. And she says the columns aren't bending the right way, but there's photographs of it, and yes, they are. Yeah, nothing ran into the heliport. And
No.
and there's debris of, Flight 77 inside the building, and DNA evidence that Walter Reed from all the passengers other than the baby. But, ignoring all that, and the black box, and, sure, it's a bomb.
And if that wasn't enough, theory C, this comes from Craig McKee and Adam Ruff. They proposed the citizens investigation theory that a drone airliner made to look like an American Airlines plane, flew over the Pentagon, and as it flew over the Pentagon, a bomb went off, and that's what caused the damage.
Wow, yeah. So is that just to all the witnesses that saw a plane going to the Pentagon? Of course, nobody said they saw it fly away, but, it just turned invisible, like the Wonder Woman jet. And so they're going with a bomb. Did they also think it was 16-foot hole, or did they at least admit the giant hole in the bottom? Or I don't know.
No, they just don't think it's that big, and it's not 16 foot, though.
Okay. Someone else is going to come up with the same theory and go, I think it was a silver plane, not white. That's their only difference, right? That'll be next year. Actually, it was silver. It was off-white. It was eggshell white, whatever. Okay. These people. And I guess they had a Q&A as well.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then when that finally ended, 7 hours after all this, finally we get to the the more rational theory, which is true. David Chandler and Wayne Costey, and they already did a 5-hour. Wayne Costey did it. He did a 5-hour series film about how a plane crashed into the Pentagon 4 years ago. So they used that information today.
Right.
And then they're
using forensic evidence and actual physics.
Right.
And
using all technical data. Yeah, exactly. Eyewitnesses.
Wasn't Chandler a former kook, though? Like he came around? Did you?
No,
Did you guys red pill him?
He'll
Or?
admit it. Yeah, he'll admit it. Like he'll say that I got it wrong, and but he reversed his role, and which was commendable. So because he really didn't believe it at first, but yeah, they finally got to speak. An hour and a half.
But my 87 cameras. It must have been a dragon because I didn't see it on film. Oh, we got a Shekelchat from Buso with 51. Ready? Fuck Grant with a red hot cast iron cactus. I could not agree more. 50 times, if possible. Talk about Ulysses Grant. I got a lot of I do a lot of Civil War shows. Oh, I got the flag. Maybe that's why I did it. So they had a vote afterward.
They did, and they had a vote. Meanwhile, you already know who lost, and it's Wayne Costey and David Chandler. Meanwhile, Barbara Honegger won the debate. with Craig McKee and Adam Ruff coming in second, and Thierry Mason coming in third.
Wow, the Russian warship outdid
Right.
an actual truth of a plane hitting the Pentagon. Like, oh, well, that's the most ridiculous thing, just because they did it in New York. And, you know, I love how in the same breath they'll talk about the flight pattern of Flight 77, and then they say it's a missile. Like, well, what is the flight pattern of a missile doing loops around D.C.? You know? But so it's important to bring these kooks up, because whenever you see a topic that has that high concentration of just stupidity, it's on purpose. Now, some of these people may have made this stuff up on their own, but their voice got amplified by intelligence while others got suppressed. So they turned the volume up on the retarded stuff, and they turned the volume down or off on people who are serious. And the Pentagon is the piece of 9/11 we probably know the most about, and it's probably the most important. People would think it's the reverse. They'd say, no, it's the World Trade Centers in Building 7 and then Flight 93, and the Pentagon doesn't really matter. Because that's the thing, when you do start, they'll allow an argument, and if they'll usually just censor you, but if they allow it, they always go to the corner, well, let's, who cares? The Pentagon's a big enigma or mystery that we'll never, ever figure it out. Let's just move to Building 7. And no, it's not a big enigma mystery. I mean, it is, but not the kind they're talking about. It definitely was a plane. If you don't have a plane hitting the Pentagon, then the hijackers on that plane don't matter, and that gets rid of the paper trail to foreign intelligence governments and intelligence agencies of foreign states. I'm trying to get that out, and possibly our own. It exonerates Cheney on his shoot-down order and many other things. And so this is why it's important to debunk these kooks rather than just ignoring them. Because when you ignore them, it doesn't work. Right? That's my mistake in the beginning. I thought, this is so stupid, I'm not even going to address it. I really wish I had addressed this stuff in 2001. I just never thought people would take it seriously, but they did. That is the majority opinion on 9/11, is the missile stuff of the truth movement or whatever. Either they believe the government story, the spook story, or the kook story. Very little in between, very little nuance. I don't know if that's been your experience too, but it is like a dogmatic cult trying to get through to these people.
I couldn't tell you how many times I've run into people who propose the missile theory at the Pentagon. And just today, I just had an argument with a guy, and this is a first for me, who claims to have been a first responder at the Pentagon and claims that no plane had crashed there.
Very different story from the actual first responders and the EMTs and the fire department and the cops and all 144 eyewitnesses and then the pathologists and everybody they brought in. I mean, you'd have to get hundreds of people to all lie at the same time and all be in on it. There's no motive either. If your story is Al-Qaeda used airplanes and ran them into buildings, why not ram an airplane into a building? Like, why blow it up some other way and try and make it look like a plane?
Well, you got to kill anybody. You got to kill everybody.
You still got to kill everybody on Flight 77 and get rid of that airplane too. And I love this stuff on that. They're like, oh yeah, it went in the ocean, or it went to Ohio, and I don't know, maybe they thermited the whole thing or melted it or something. Like, so stupid. And they say the air phone calls are fake, which they say are cell phone calls, and those calls are important, and it's important to admit the accuracy of them, which are on the black box on Flight 93, for example, because it gives us very damning information. But before we skip to that, let's talk about the hijackers on Flight 77 and sort of rewind, or yeah, we'll start there and go backwards. It's going to be hard to tag all this stuff. I was going to talk about 99 and the dry run, because that was an Arizona cell too, but since there is supposed new information on CBS, have you seen this, where they're basically vindicating the story that you and I and others have been saying forever about Omar Bayoumi being a middleman, assisting hijackers with logistical support and financial support. They unearthed a box. He was arrested 2 weeks after September 11th. The British authorities went and nabbed him. And so they've been sitting on this a long time, but they unearthed a box of documents, and in there is a homemade video that has Omar Bayoumi on film with Nawif al-Hazmi and Khalid al-Mihdhar, both of whom were on Flight 77, and having a big dinner party and a nice hoo-ha there. And I believe you and I can identify some of the other people in the video who were pixelated. We'll get to that in a minute, but there it is. Like, it's, and the 9/11 victims' families have gotten to see this. Now, when you see it written down, you see it in the documents, you see it in the JS report, you see it in the now partially unredacted consecutive 28 pages that had been redacted. That's one thing. When you have a video of the guy and the hijackers in their kitchen, that's different. And that's what we have now in San Diego with Omar Bayoumi. Now, he didn't do that alone, but this is a guy that was on the government's payroll. I'll just add one more thing, and I'll give you the floor for a sec. But CBS did a disservice because they tried to exonerate the 9/11 Commission report by saying, well, when they interviewed Omar Bayoumi and let him off the hook, they did not know at that time that he had been a employee of the Saudi government. And they cited some 2017 document that showed that he was. But that's not true, because we all have known that for a long time. Irrespective of that document from 2017, that was not the first document shown that had that information. There were many other sources for that. That's why do you think he got arrested 2 weeks after 9/11? Why did they even know who he was, right? They knew, and they knew he was working for the Saudi government, because if I knew, then the intelligence agencies had to know. And I put that in War by Deception and Empire Unmasked long before 2017, as well as probably 90% of the information that was in the 28 pages had all been leaked. You know, people were talking about it. It just wasn't on YouTube, CNN, whatever, you know. So let's talk about Omar Bayoumi. I'm sure you've brought this up with people in Osama Basnan and the intermediaries. You get any traction with the kooks, or with people on the fence, or do they just stare at you like, why do you know these Arab names? Or
when the cashier documents were released, it was 510 pages, and the only news outlet that actually reported it, and that's the reason why I found it, was NorthJersey.com. And for like 3 days, nobody announced on it. It was on the FBI's website, but I was shocked, but not too shocked, because they're still covering up for Saudi Arabia. So I made a video, and I remember making a video at 4 something in the morning, because I said, this vindicates what people like us have been saying for years, is that now we finally have evidence that the Saudi government directly paid an intermediary to the hijackers themselves inside the United States. I read the 510-page cache, and
I found it on government
Omar
archives, but I guess that's copied from the FBI. But go ahead.
Yeah, it's from the FBI's pent bomb investigation dated July 17, 2003, where al-Bayoumi was employed by the company that he rejected to always bring attention to, and that's the Saudi Arabia Presidency of Civil Aviation. Yep. And he's been an employee since 1975. An individual that was interviewed by the FBI was the guy who had hired him. His name was Hamid al-Rashid. Yep. And that's not as important as who his son is. His son is Saud Abdulaziz Raoud al-Rashid.
Yeah, they found his photo in the safe house in Pakistan, Karachi. Yep. Exactly.
So they found one of those CDs that they found was a CD of his passport, but the passports of other hijackers, including Khalid al-Mihdhar, Nawaf al-Hazmi, I think it was Abdulaziz al-Amari. Not Nawaf al-Hazmi, Salim al-Hazmi. So Khalid al-Mihdhar, Salim al-Hazmi, and Abdulaziz al-Amari. And right there just shows you that this government agency has an employee who has a son who is obviously probably connected to the hijackers, who is paying an intermediary who lied about his previous employment, who is paying the hijackers inside the
And Hamid al-Rashid is the one that was in charge of Omar Bayomi's salary.
Right.
And others.
Yeah.
Yes.
And others. So also in this cache documents is also another interesting find is that Osama Basnan, somebody we mentioned, in previous years, had engaged in a consensually recorded conversation, and the meeting took place in San Diego. And this is also from the Pent Bomb investigation, and this is dated September 24th, 2001, where this person, whose name is redacted, was a confidential informant for the FBI. And it basically said that Osama Basnan basically knew about the attacks ahead of time and knew certain people within the attacks and knew what they were going to do, but didn't basically say that he assisted them. So he basically was almost there, so to speak, involving himself, but he didn't go that far. Whether that was level of distrust or not, who knows?
And a woman on the 9/11 Commission report that was digging into this got removed, and all her information, like, they wouldn't go with it. I forget her name now, but she was trying to follow up on this, and they were having none of it on the lead. Of course, it's Lee Hamilton, so they wanted none of that.
Right.
But this was... The 9/11 Commission report is trash. The GIS reports, the Senate investigation is far better and more in depth than the whitewash of the 9/11 Commission. But you don't need that. Like, you can go straight to the source. You can read the Pent Bomb investigation. You can do FOIA requests for other FBI papers, and obviously I have a large cache of those on the Israeli roll. We're going to talk about Saudis first today, but Hamid al-Rashid is somebody most 9/11 people never heard of the guy. Never knew there was a safe house in Karachi, Pakistan with photographs and documents on it. They don't know, right? And the reason is because the kook movement acts as a 9/11 dragnet on Google. You'd have to know exactly what to search to find these things. Like, first of all, they don't know what they don't know, and then even if they are looking for things on 9/11, you're never just going to stumble upon this nowadays, right? It's just been whitewashed. Just speaking to the audience, I'll tell you, the Saudi state, so Princess Haifa bin Fasil, that's Bandar Bush's girl. Bandar Bush used to be the head of what's the equivalent of the Saudi Arabian CIA, right?
General Intelligence Director.
Fasil sent money to how do you say her name? Majed, yeah, DWEIKAT. I call her Dwaket a lot, and then she sent money to Manal Banjard, which is the wife of Omar Bayoumi, and Majid is the wife of Osama Basnan. So it's really Osama Basnan and Omar Bayoumi, but they sent the money through their wives and from the princess. They're like, ooh, we'll use women, because in Saudi Arabia they're like, women have no agency, they can't do anything, they'll never be suspected, right? Wrong, but that's what they did. And so supposedly for medical expenses is how they were trying to chalk up the amounts that were being transferred. And Riggs Bank, which is what the CIA used to use before they briefly used BCCI to finance the Mujahideen in Afghanistan until that got defunct in the early 90s. Went right back to Riggs, clearing checks for Al-Qaeda. No one held responsible for this. And that network from the Saudi state to Al-Qaeda intermediaries, Osama Basnan and Omar Bayoumi, is known, is admitted. Our own FBI, this isn't secret or anything. Right there, you already have state support for Al-Qaeda, and the media wants nothing to do with it. And I think the reason is, if you try to call up anybody in the press to talk about a 9/11 conspiracy, they're going to just off with you because they've heard it.
The kooks have dogmatically attacked everybody with their nonsense for so long that no one wants to hear about it, right? I know when Eddie Bravo tried to talk to Joe Rogan on my behalf about 9/11, he got met with a no Eddie, nah, because Rogan's heard all the Jonestown stuff, right? And he thinks, no, I've heard that. He's like, no, this is this is the real one. Couldn't reach him, right? But can you imagine what would have happened if that contact had been made and I had gotten on Joe Rogan and started talking 9/11?
Probably would have gotten somewhere.
You probably would have reached an 11 million person audience, could have debunked all the kook stuff and just started giving out names, and it would have changed the world, I think, but you can't get at it. So one of the other guys that Omar Bayoumi sort of tasked, so let's talk about what they did too. So they get Nawif Hazmi and Khalid al-Mihdhar an apartment, stayed with them for a little while, and then moved in next door. Then he sort of passes the baton to Basnan, who's monitoring them, helping them out. And then they hired a guy named Modhar Abdullah and basically told him, just give them whatever they need. And this guy translates for them, help them get to their flight schools, which is something else too, right? Like you have the Bojinka plot and Bin Laden planned to attack America, and Condoleezza Rice is saying, well, we couldn't imagine airplanes. Really? Because the CIA had followed these two guys to a Al-Qaeda summit meeting in Malaysia, where they met with Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and stayed the night with him. Even they're definitely criminals. One of them was on Interpol already, and they're using their real names, and they land in Culver City and then go to San Diego, and they're going to flight schools, and you can't imagine that they were going to use airplanes. Jesus, when the Pajinka plot by Ramzi Youssef, who already attacked the World Trade Center in 1993, and you can't imagine which buildings they're going to hit with planes. Now, you can call it incompetence because it's government, or they're looking away on purpose. I'll let the viewer decide there. But anyway, so he's helping them with that, and he also opened their bank accounts for them because they didn't have enough English to do that. So here's a guy who opens bank accounts for guys. They're getting money from essentially the Saudi government, and they're going to flight schools, and they're already known to be terrorists and meeting with KSM, and the CIA is well aware of this, and no action was taken. And the CIA did not even inform the FBI until August, like weeks before 9/11, and they had already moved to the East Coast in April. So they weren't even the FBI has field offices. So if you tell the West Coast field office of such and such, they don't communicate so well. So those are some real names and real pieces. 9/11 right there, and we're going to be able to add on to this ad nauseum. But you've got a state sponsor of giving logistical support and also hiring out other people to continue it, who could feign ignorance to go, I don't know, I was just doing what I was told to do. They told me help these guys, give them whatever they need. I didn't ask any questions, whatever. And you have a similar thing going on in Hamburg too. So if you want to add, if I missed something on Bayoumi or Basnan, you can go ahead and throw it in, and then we can move over to Hamburg.
Well, no, I mean, you covered most of the important aspects there, but just to mention also, after Al-Mihdhar and Al-Hazmi basically left San Diego, they went to live with Abdus Sheikh, who is actually an FBI informant who had a code name Stan, and his handler was Stephen Butler from the San Diego field office. How they found the number was that the mosque that they were going to basically had a billboard where they had a sign from Abdus Sheikh about renting rooms at his house in Lebanon Grove, California. And so Al-Mihdhar and Al-Hazmi actually waited inside the mosque and waited for Abdus Sheikh, and they spoke with him. And the reason why they left Al-Bayoumi's, that apartment from Al-Bayoumi where they were partying, was because Khalid al-Mihdhar actually was very suspicious of Al-Bayoumi, because he said that and this is coming from Abdus Sheikh, was interviewed by the FBI. He says that Khalid al-Mihdhar told him that he thought that al-Bayoumi was a spy, and because he was always walking around with the camera, which is actually a good thing because we got to see the the documents of
Yeah,
files.
somebody was
Currently out.
somebody else was filming because Omar Bayoumi's
Yeah.
in that film, but they were trying to avoid the camera as much as possible. And then I think it's Midar they caught in the kitchen at least, so we have a still of that. But we can mention some of the conduits they used was the Kurdish Community Center, which guess who the imam was there, and then there was the Dala Avco, which was a real job but a fake payroll. It's overpaid for nothing type of situation. And then of course many of the people involved in that Kurdish mosque were assassinated by Obama. Al-Zawahiri.
Oh, I
yeah,
didn't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't know how much, like, how many more details they need on that. That's good enough, I guess.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Well, I mean, like, pick a person, like, give you the whole background on it if need be. But so they go from San Diego to Arizona. Hanji Hanjor comes in. Hanji Hanjor enters the U.S. before any of the hijackers, if my memory serves right. Got in like 1990, I think.
Yeah, he went to the University of Arizona in 1992.
Right. And ASU. Speaking of which, let's rewind a little bit. I don't want to brush over this, but so you have to help me with this name. The two guys that did the dry run at 9/11 that got grounded in Ohio. One is Hamdad al-Shalawi and Muhammad al. Please say it.
Kuyarin.
Kuyarin. Yeah, I can't.
Kuyarin.
It's like Quhaeeedin or something, or Eeai, whatever. Yeah, I just call him Mock and Haas. I took the first letter, Muhammad al Kuyarin, whatever, and then Hamdad al Shalawi's not a bad name, I guess, but Mock and Haas, Shalawi went to ASU too, and he had a PhD. This was not some dummy. He spoke perfect English because he studied linguistics. He'd been trained in Afghanistan for a cohort tower type of attack, which that's the towers they attacked on the base in Saudi Arabia in '96. He recognized Hanji Hanjor when they gave him the photographs. Like, he didn't recognize any of the other ones, allegedly, but he pointed him out. He had met him, and we know that Hanjor had also been in Arizona and also been at the university in Arizona. And then, of course, Muhammad Mock, we'll just call him Mock, he got money from the Saudi government. So again, now why are these two, what did they do? Why is it important? Well, what they did was they had their flight, they were on a flight that was paid for by the Saudi state to attend some Saudi function in D.C., and they had to ground the plane over Ohio because these two made multiple attempts to get into the cockpit, and the excuse was, we needed to use the bathroom, which was in the back of the plane where they were instructed to go, and they kept going up to the front trying to get in. So they ground the whole plane, arrest these guys. They waved their hands around in the air yelling racism, and basically everybody backed off. But they shouldn't have, because they then arrested Zachariah Sobra, who is the guy who was an Al-Qaeda recruiter in Arizona, who was driving around in Mock's car, because that's who drove them to the airport the day they went and attempted to hijack a plane. Also with that was another Al-Qaeda operative named Ghassan al-Sharbi, who was taking flight lessons in Arizona and didn't even try to say he wasn't guilty. When he's in Gitmo now, he's like, yeah, I'm part of Al-Qaeda and I'm proud of it, right? And he had known both of them. So, and then in Shalawi's, I guess, interview, interrogation, whatever, you catch him in lies. And you know who was investigating this whole thing? Robert Mueller. And he let him off, right? And this is the same guy investigating Trump, right? Just there he is, Robert Mueller. I mean, again, and they definitely, I mean, they come on, your car's being driven by an Al Qaeda recruiter. You were training in Afghanistan yourself, but just for the fight to Soviets, right? And then another Al Qaeda operative who's in Gitmo for building bombs, right? And then one of you at least is trained to do a Kohar Tower bombing, and the other one's getting money from the Saudi state. But you just didn't know where the bathroom was on an airplane, according to Robert Mueller, right? To hell with what the flight attendants and captain and all the witnesses on the plane said. Just going to take them at face value with their story. I can tell you what their story was, but I don't know how much time we need. But Mock said he had to go to the bathroom, and Shalawi said, oh yeah, you should go to the back, but he went to the front, and then I went to sleep. But the other story is, no, both of you tried multiple times to get up to the front and get in the cockpit and were turned around. They weren't even supposed to be sitting together either. That's another part of it that doesn't shake out. But yeah, and they were speaking Arabic really loudly to each other, according to everybody. And anyway, they're definitely guilty. It's too coincidental to be like, oh yeah, you're on an airplane paid for by the Saudi state. You, according to many, were trying to get into the cockpit, and your car, you were driven there by an Al Qaeda recruiter, and you got a liaison that's also training in Al Qaeda, where you also went to Afghanistan and trained. Come on. Nothing was said about that, and the story about this dry run in '99 didn't really resurface till like 2018 or something. I think Al Jazeera and Press TV covered it. Guarantee you, most 9/11 researchers never heard about it. Again, because of the kook movement. And please add if I missed stuff. I'm forgetting a lot of this stuff. So, like,
no, it's understandable. I interviewed Ken Williams, who wrote the Phoenix Memo, which was based on Zachariah Subra, and he had went and interviewed Zachariah Subra in his house. And when he opened up his door, he said he saw signed pictures of Osama bin Laden and Abdullah Azzam.
Wow.
And Ken Williams looked at his partner, and he said that, after talking with him, he says, we got to open a report on this guy. He's got to be under 24-hour watch, because what Subra said to them was obviously alarming. And he told them that we want to attack the United States. We hate your country. Basically, given the old generalizations about what they did to Arabs in the Middle East. And Ken Williams basically...
Salahi said the same thing. He said, I had nothing to do with it, wasn't involved. This is against Islam. Violence is bad. But I don't like how you're treating the Palestinians and favoring the Israelis. Like, he still had to say that, which I agree. I don't like how they're treating Palestinians either, but... yeah.
Right. But it just shows you the
when
motivation
was this?
of what
when did they go to his house? What year?
In the year 1999, I think. This is right
after the incident on West America?
Yeah, the incident on the plane. Yeah, on the plane. And instead, what they did was they basically told Ken Williams to basically detail an arsonist in Arizona. And for the next, 14 months, he went chasing this one guy who was setting off fires on people's houses and in the forests. And while that was happening, I told him, I said, why do you think they moved you? He goes, well, the FBI at the time didn't think too much about counterterrorism, but he also, at the same time, he goes, if I would have been on detail, he had an informant named Henry Allen Jr., who was a Muslim convert. And I forgot the Muslim name he was going by, but Ibrahim something. But he basically was the one he's the one who told Ken Williams about Zachariah Subra, and that's why he went to the house. But the FBI detailed him to the arsonist, and by the time he came back, it's like mid-2001, and his report was the Phoenix Memo. The Phoenix Memo was about Arizona, Scottsdale, Arizona, to be precise, and how these radical Arabs that would link to Subra, which would mean linked to Al-Qaeda, that were training at flight schools.
And it was Mesa, Arizona, that the California cell went to. I'm going to pause here and do the Odysee Shekelchats and Entropy for a second. So first, somebody sent one Libri token. It says loud and clear. Thank you. It's good to know the sound's working. Yes, playing Ryan, thank you. Free State Jake said, oh, that was from Rootin' Tootin' and Snap Phase. Free State Jake says, the two 9/11 experts, glad y'all are doing this. I'm happy to do this too. I usually don't get this detailed. I used to, but I got sick of the kooks, basically. Like, Tegs, it said base. Also, I had 3 kids and I just don't have time. Snapface says, hey, Tegs, it hope you and yours have been well, mate. And then somebody wrote anonymous generals. I'm making fun of the Russian generals for the Terry Mason thing. Oh. P1 Dizzy says, nice instant attitude adjustment. Meh, too sweet. It's Rye and Adam. Thanks for coming on, gentlemen. Made my Tuesday. Happy to make your Tuesday. It was a Tuesday on September 11th, too.
Right.
Taco Tuesday, somebody says. And then chat on Entropy Shekel there, too. I'm going Entropy now. We got Boosa. Fuck Grant with Red Hot Cactus. Deluxe 24/7 sends $9.11 and says it was Trump's fault. Sure. And P1 Dizzy for 3. Right. Don't forget to check Odysee 2. I know there were glitches with visibility on your end last week. I don't know. Adam E. Muss was asking as well from the last stream. Thanks, DZ. I think it works from desktop, but might not from the app or something like that. I am seeing at least seeing the library token ones, and I saw one for $1, so I guess it's working. It is what it is. P Dizzy, by the way, sent $90.11, so that has made this worth it doing already. I'm glad. That's awesome. I wish we had the kind of shekels these charlatans were getting. They're getting like, they'd raise $10,000 no problem just to put up posters in subways that said Google Building 7. Just ridiculous low-level, low-info amounts of information from like Luke Grofsky and stuff. And just like tearing my hair out listening to. I'm like, you guys aren't. I've forgotten more about 9/11 than these people know. That's not arrogant. That's like a real. That's truth. Yeah, and they just. Oh, that's what gets all the attention, man. Jonestown just sucked the air out of everything, and. Ugh. So that's if you have questions. I know there's a delay. You might want to get them in now. You can go to on Entropy. I'll go ahead and share that link on Telegram and Odysee. Do you have a Zelle or anything like that, Adam?
No, I don't. I don't care for
Well,
money.
I was going to give it to you anyway, but I don't have PayPal or any of that stuff. I'm banned for telling the truth about too many things. So.
No, you get banned on everything.
Yeah, pretty much. Still have Entropy. Still have Odysee. Getting the new ones. I hope they seem to be pretty pro free speech. They kind of have to be for their business model because it's the only reason to use them. If you're gonna get rid of free speech on Odysee, then go ahead and do YouTube. I mean, you can get banned. You got more eyeballs, and you can still get banned. Deluxe247 sends a high five. Says thanks for the information. Thank you for the Shekel chat. I have a list of the different Islamic centers and like BS business cutouts. That's really boring, I'm sure, but if you want it, it's in the middle of a video, 7 minutes and 30 seconds in. You can freeze it on my Substack top post right now. That's if you really, really want to nerd out on this stuff. And it is important. It's important to know the business fronts as well. And they always seem to couch it in legitimate Islamic centers and stuff because it's just political suicide to accuse such a thing of doing wrongdoing. It's like, oh, you're Islamophobic, blah, blah, blah. Which sometimes they are, you know. So, but that was the excuse that these two, Mak and Haas, or Hamdad al-Shawawi and Muhammad al-Qudin, or whatever. I cannot say his name. Qudin. Just call him Qudin. It just has a lot of vowels, but it's just one E, huh? Anyway, that's how they were like, they actually sued and said, you know, they were victims of racism. And then they dropped it. They were convinced not to do an appeal after the 9/11 climate because it was like, you're not going to win this now. So they did. But that's what they went with. And all these connections, it was weird because that trial was, or lawsuit was going for 2 years, you know, after 9/11. So they definitely must have discovered the other Arizona recruiters and things we had mentioned, like Subra and so on. Subra, excuse me. And but you'll see a pattern here of where the most damning testimony from different witnesses is usually refused, which I guess will come up again when we get to Hamburg. So let's finish up with Arizona. So you were saying, reiterate this again. Williams opens the door and sees autographed pictures of Osama bin Laden.
Yeah, there was actually Ken Williams, when Subra opened the door, he noticed that behind Zacharias Subra, near the like all the way on top of the wall, there were two pictures. It was Osama bin Laden and Abdul Azam, and that when he was interviewing Subra, he wouldn't let them in the house. So he was speaking right outside the door, and Subra was basically telling them that the United States needs to pay and they need to face consequences for what they've done to the Muslim community in the Middle East, and basically said that he proposes attacks inside the United States. So when Kim Williams is leaving, he's basically telling his partner, I don't know who that guy was, but he's basically telling me we need to get a monitor this guy. He's dangerous. So the headliner for the Phoenix memo, if you'll see the Phoenix memo on the front page, you'll see the name Subra. That's exactly who the Phoenix memo was detailing. It's detailing Zachariah Subra and the amount of flight schools that were located in Scottsdale from an informant from Ken Williams that were that throughout the years 1999 and 2000, that were an unusually high number of Arabs were flying at these flight schools. And through that informant, basically these were people that were linked to Subra. So
and he's the one that drove the car, Mock's car, to drop them off at the airport where they, got lost on the airplane or whatever their story was.
Right.
It was serious enough that they grounded the flight in Ohio, and I guess there was I think an Egyptian airline had gone down recently and people were on edge, whatever. I'm not buying that. Most of the plebs would have no idea what had happened in Egypt or not. It was just guys yelling Arabic at each other and repeatedly trying to get to the front of the plane to the cockpit. Couldn't get in. Good enough that there was a male stewardess there too that prevented a lot of that. Forgot his name, but I've seen the documents somewhere. And this stuff you can find all these documents online today. In fact, maybe after this talk, I'll put a bunch of them up on ANC Report. That's save you a lot of time. If we, I'll do that. So, and I used to do little videos on YouTube that were 10, 15 minutes long. Would just go over a certain segment, and of course they just removed my whole channel. And even before they removed the whole channel, they would flag those videos. I was like, what's going on? You guys want to protect Saudi Arabia and Al Qaeda? What gives? Of course, they did the same thing for the info on the Israelis. I knew that was going to happen, but you can't even talk about the occupation of Palestine, and that's kind of what motivated these people to do what they did, right? If we were allowed to inform the American public and be disgusted about the treatment of Palestinians by the Israelis, there never would have been the incentive and motive and ability to recruit all these people willing to kill themselves to get back at America for how they treated Muslims. That and the starvation of children in Iraq and bombing in Lebanon and so on and so on. They're not wrong when they say how the American government has treated the Middle East, but that is not civilians in New York just going to work that you blow up, their office building. But I try to put myself in their shoes, and I think, like, how enraged would I be if 500,000 American children were starving to death because of some foreign power and we were being colonized and occupied. You do all the same things and be like, I don't know, man. Like, I think a lot of people would become violent. It's like, this kind of extremity is not because they're crazy. It's because they're in a crazy environment.
Yeah, look, all throughout history, if you take a look at Osama bin Laden, for example, video interviews that he's done, at no point, either from Osama bin Laden or Dr. Ayman al-Zawahiri or from Muhammad Atta or from Ramzi Youssef during his sentencing, or Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, Abu Musab al-Zarqawi from ISIS. All of these people basically say the reason why they're doing this, is because of American foreign policy with Israel. Every single one. I'm not generalizing here. At no point did they ever say they're attacking us because our women wear too short of a dress or that we're a secular country. None of that. Even though the State Department basically
George
said,
Bush told us they attacked us for our freedom.
Yeah, they attacked us for our freedom. Right. Yeah, but it's covering up for the fact that the reason why they were attacking us. Because if we, God forbid, we start looking into the
and
real
bases
reason,
on Saudi Arabia, that was another trigger,
they,
which they had attacked
Right, exactly.
right in '96, right?
That's right.
And that was all missing information. The attacks in '96, the attacks on the Trade Center in '93, which is another can of worms, and none of that was referenced. It was all what did they reference? Pearl Harbor, which was in the PNAC Magnus Opus, Rebuilding America's Defenses, with all the typical neocons who wrote crazy stuff like racially specific bioweapons to be used, which is not too far-fetched. It seems like they may have been really doing that in Ukraine in these biolabs, and we know they did gain a function in Wuhan as much as they deny it, but that NIH did give money to EcoHealth, who then sent it to Wuhan to do research on coronaviruses and upgrade them essentially, which is gain of function. Fauci denied that to Senator Rand Paul, and which makes him guilty of perjury. But the Democratic Party especially is so invested in this COVID narrative, and Pfizer and all these financial group powers of Big Pharma are so literally invested in it that I don't think the truth of that will ever be admitted. It's just too many rich people with too much to lose. But you know, that's another can of worms. But you know, we can get into whatever we want to talk about. It's my show, but
Yeah, I was just gonna say, hey, you know, maybe you don't want to do that on this show, but I was like, oh wait,
yeah,
we're
we're
not
on
on
Odyssey.
YouTube.
Like we can talk about biolabs. We can talk about the Fauci virus. Doesn't matter. I mean, this would have been banned anyway for just the 9/11 stuff. We haven't even got to the date yet. But so we've been talking about Khalid al-Midhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi from Flight 77. Now they have all these connections to all these Arizona cell and the people in San Diego and the Saudi intermediaries that go back to Bandar Bush and Haifa bin Fasil. Okay, and they're and ad nauseum, and they're laundering money through the Kurdish mosque there, and so on and so on. And there was another honey company out of the UAE that was sending them money, and da-da-da-da. Okay, so all that leads up to Flight 77 that these guys hijack and ram into the Pentagon. If you don't admit that these hijackers are real and they're not still alive, because that's one of the other kook things, there was, however, I will say, there was a group of guys that were initially thought to be the hijackers who weren't, who had the same names as some other people, and they were alive in Florida. And some dickhead has clipped me talking about those guys being alive because they had the wrong people, and said, look, you used to say they were still alive. I'm like, no, I didn't. I said those people were alive because they are. They're not 9/11 hijackers, though. They got the information wrong. Anyway, they clip stuff out of context, and I'm not even going to warrant their names or whatever, but they're full of crap. It is essential to admit that they hijacked this plane. Hanji Hanjor is also involved with this Arizona cell, right? He was picked out of the picture by Shalawi, and he'd also met with a lot of these operatives from Saudi Arabia, and he most likely was the pilot of Flight 77. I know there's a theory 6 on 7. Maybe you could talk a bit about that, as Nelson made a film about it, of a possible additional hijacker on Flight 77. And this is a reasonable thing to discuss. Like,
yeah, absolutely, it's a reasonable speculation, as I would say, as opposed to unreasonable speculation. Yeah, this comes from a phone call from one of the flight attendants, Renee May, where she calls her mother in Las Vegas, and basically she says, "Mom, we're being hijacked, and there's 6 of them." Now, if it was a passenger, I would understand, but as a flight attendant, you would know, a number of people who would be as participants in something like that.
There's a 6th guy that checked in with them too, like goes through the
yes, Moazed Khaner,
right. And that name comes from something that CNN said once and then erased.
Right, and mistaken him for Ziad Jarrah, actually.
Right.
The individual was wearing a black shirt, black pants, and he has 2 bags. And he looked to be had black hair, short cropped, very dark skinned.
By the way,
male.
Ziad was not on that flight. He's allegedly on flight 93. So even the official story doesn't have him on that anymore, but they'd mistaken him for this person. They don't really look alike, though, in my opinion.
Right, no.
He's got kind of a curlier hair, yeah.
Yeah, right. You know that what happened was that there's also another anomaly with 93 we could talk about too, and that's much more greater, and that ties
we'll just stay on 77 for organization, and then
it's fine. Yeah, but Moazed Khaner, he's actually mistaken for Hani Hanjour, and the CNN reported on this, and then Nelson actually went and did a film based on that and said whatever happened to Moazed Khaner. He basically just dropped off base
6 on 77 if anybody wants to watch it, if it's still out.
No, it's still up there, remarkably.
I'm going to grab that and put it on Odysee and put it on ANC Report just in case.
Yeah. So when the FBI shut down any information about Moazed Khaner, so nobody knows what happened to him. Nobody knows if he was actually part of the team or not, or whether he was the pilot, because Hani Hanjour was basically, a novice pilot. But then again, I always
doesn't take much to crash a plane, though.
Yeah, you don't have to be an expert to crash a plane. So, but to the 9/11 Truth Movement, to those of the fringe conspiracy theories, that alone could basically disqualify Hanjour as a pilot. And I said that's terrible because you have amateur pilots who replicate the flight data recorder of 77 who successfully crash into the Pentagon using the coordinates from the flight data recorder.
Also,
and those videos are up on
whoever the pilot wasn't very good because they had to take 2 swipes at it. Originally, he came in at too high an altitude, so he had to circle back. And this isn't some corkscrew maneuver. This is like miles long, big circle, like a letter P almost, and then goes in a straight line at a lower altitude and hits the first floor of the Pentagon, which is not much different than hitting a runway. You just don't put the landing gear down and you don't slow down. You just maintain your speed and run into the wall, which is what happened. We had a couple chats come in. One from Deluxe247 that said test, and one from LBRT that says we're so far in our own end zone that we've had like 4 touchbacks already. You got that right. Checking entropy, still the same on there. All right. Well, y'all have if you have questions or comments, try it on entropies for sure, and but try Odysee first because they give us a better percentage. But it seems like both are working right now. Snap phase, Texit, P1 Dizzy. So we're here to answer questions. Like, this is a good opportunity. If you're like, you can ask us whatever. You're not gonna stump us. Like, give us your best, because this is your opportunity to really get a deep dive in 9/11. So that'll take a minute before they actually hear that. But 83 currently watching on Odysee. That's not so bad. Share this link around, please. Share the Odysee link or VK link around on your Telegrams. I forgot I have a Twitter. I guess I could do that now. I got one after Elon Musk bought the company, even though it's not, that's not finished or whatever. I thought, well, I'll try, All right, there we go. I tweeted it. Well, it looks like I got an Atwood bump. It was 1,500 yesterday. It's 1,688 right now. It's not bad. I've only been on Twitter a few days. I used to have far bigger following, though. Had 81,000 on YouTube and 15 or 16,000 on Twitter that I hardly use, but sucks, man. Sucks getting censored. Doing this 20 years and this happens. I just added Rand Paul and Dave Smith. There, at least my suggestion box is good. I got you on there too, Adam. You're one of the 5th person I added, I think. There we go. So yeah, we're just going to give credit to Nelson for making a movie about this. I was done making movies by then, man. I was like, man, every video I did about anything, Syria, whatever, the comments were all cookers about the Pentagon. Like, it's just, they just follow around. Like, you got to say it. You got to say it. Like, why? I don't believe that. I've gone over this ad nauseum. And not a single one of these MFers would ever debate. I'm like, here's my Skype. Call me. Let's have a civil debate. None of them would do it. They know they'd get wrecked. They just, it's a bully mob. They're like, we're a big group, and so we can all validate one another and say we're right and you're dumb and har. I can't imagine a dumber people. When you said they had that 10-hour symposium by Richard Gage and then they voted on it, Richard Gage is the guy that went on, was it National Geographic or Discovery? Forget. And they sat there and showed him like the physics, and he still denied. He's all twitching in his chair and uncomfortable, and it was him, one of the morons from Loose Change, Dylan Avery, yeah, and David Griffin. And they sat there and showed them. They fired it through 6 walls, which is a stupid test because they don't have rings on the bottom floor of the Pentagon. It's on the upper floor, so it only has to go through 1 wall and a bunch of sheetrock. But even if there had been rings, it still would have plowed through, and they proved that to them, and they just ad hoc hypotheses indefinitely. Oh, well, we're not sure the scale. Like, they said, do you approve this test? Is this test going to satisfy you? Yeah. They test it. It's not the results Gage and them wanted, and then they're like, well, we're not really sure about the test. It's like, well, okay, let's do another one. What would you like us to do? Fly an actual plane into a building? Like, what would it take for you to admit this? But I feel like those shows are doing a disservice because it's like, god damn, man, there's a big airplane-sized hole in the building. It's full of debris from Flight 77, and you got the genetic evidence of the passengers at Walter Reed. The pathologist sent in eyewitnesses. Like, it's a plane. And they'll say, well, the 87 cameras, and that's based on an affidavit about 9/11 in general, not the Pentagon. Almost all those cameras were from New York. And they don't really usually have a camera pointing at a wall. Like, the cameras look at the doors where people go in and out of, and they're on the parking lot where people park. They don't have a camera just pointed in the middle of a wall for some reason, and where nothing comes. And they're not designed to catch an airplane zipping across the parking lot. They're designed to catch people walking, maybe running across the parking lot, or driving quite slowly as they park a car. Also, the lawn is not adjacent to the building the parking lot is. Obviously, you don't park and then walk across the lawn to get to the Pentagon. You drive past the lawn and you park, and the parking lot's next. They'll say, look, there's no debris on the lawn. The lawn is nowhere near the wall. It's a million different lies, right? Oh, what about Rolls-Royce engines? And you've heard it, right? Oh, I hate these people. I hate them.
It's amazing that they would think that a plane going 530 miles an hour carrying 77,000 pounds of fuel is actually anything large is going to survive. And this is something I've come across many a time, and I'm sure you have done too, is that, well, the engine should have survived. Well, what makes you think an engine is going to survive that impact, going that force with that much fuel acting as a bomb? And not only that, I also get people that say, well, how come we didn't find any bodies?
We did,
now,
though, and their pieces of the engine did survive. They have to realize the Pentagon had basement levels as well, and so that floor caved out and a lot of stuff got buried underneath. But yeah, you do have pieces of the turbines, and you've got the landing gear, including a tire that's sitting in front of the C ring, and you do have bodies, and you have dental records from some of these bodies.
The black box was found on September 13th.
The black box is broken, but they did find it.
Yeah. They found it. Yeah. They found the fuselage. They found landing gear. I mean, the person who found the flight data recorder was Carlton Berkhammer of the Department of the Navy. So you have a lot of this plane debris, just not in large pieces. And the reason why is, I can understand why, is that most people assume that, this is basically like an unintentional crash. Whereas you have a pilot who's dumping the fuel, who's trying to land safely on his belly.
With the wheels down.
That wasn't the
That's
case.
the important part, right?
Right,
yeah.
exactly.
Because most crashes, usually the tail survives or something, right?
Right,
yeah. This is hitting a wall on purpose with the landing gear up. And there have been crashes like that where there was fog or something and they just smacked into a mountain or whatever. And in all those incidences, there's hardly anything left, of size of that plane. Because the plane is mostly a hollow tube, other than the landing gear and some of the luggage compartment with steel frames. It's just a big aluminum tube, and it's full of fuel in the wings. So nothing in the wings is going to survive. Like 40,000 gallons of jet fuel. Yeah, that'll do it. Especially when you run into a building at 500 plus miles an hour, or even 300 miles an hour. That thing is gone. It's not the same as, landing on the wheels at an angle and not hitting, straight in the ground. Like Flight 93. Flight was upside down and then headed nose first straight toward the ground. And in other crashes, you probably got a couple examples of that, right? Like, I forget offhand, but there have been crashes where they just hit the side of a mountain suddenly, or pilots were drinking or whatever, and they just crashed.
German Wings 95
there you go.
In 2015 crashed into the Andes Mountains.
And there was nothing left of that.
No, they didn't find a body or nothing.
They've simulated that too in testing, where they send a plane into a wall or send a rocket ship into a wall, and it like nothing. Yeah, there's nothing left of it. The wall wins. Now, if it's and by the way, the Pentagon did not have 6 inches of reinforced steel, and it just was a couple bricks, And you can see that you can see the wall because it's a big hole, and you can see exactly how thick the wall was and what it was made of. And you can see that on the punch-out ring too. It's just a couple layers of bricks and some insulation. That's it.
Yeah. That's why That's why the exit hole was A&E Drive. Mm-hmm. It just went right through, straight on through.
There's video of this too, of the fire department there, in inches of water, spraying everything down, and you can see the landing gear. You can see a tire. You can see it's sitting outside the C ring. But the C ring is counting the rings from above. From below, there's no ring. A goes straight to C. And you could ask Pentagon employees about that. They actually have ramps rather than stairs that go up to the upper floors. That's how it was designed. That way, anything on wheels is easily. You don't have to elevator. You can just roll it up the ramp. Mm-hmm. Odysee seems to have tapped out here. Let me see what the hell's going on.
Oh, has it?
I'm getting... Oh, okay. It's back. I was a little worried there with the Wheel of Death. I wasn't thinking Odysee shafted us. I thought Skype might have gotten to us. I don't know. Okay, there. So, comments, checking. Okay, this is a funny one. Via ADHD says, what kind of wallet did the guys on the plane have? I'd like to buy one that can withstand such high temperatures. I guess they're referring to the unburned passports or partially burned passports. There actually have been crashes. There was mail and stuff that also survived, made of just regular paper. Yeah. And when there is enough of it, it is not impossible for paper items or whatever to survive a crash, like in New York, whatever, where bam, and got pushed out fast enough and, floats to the ground. It's improbable to have something made of paper both survive and be, one of 5 documents possible to be one of the hijackers. And it is a little bit mysterious that just some guy hands a passport to Bernard Carrick, who we know had recently taken a trip to Israel, where he got a $250,000 loan through an intermediary named Steve Witkoff, a marble dealer for the Gambino family, from Ertine Wertheimer, who's the richest man in Israel on the board of governors for the Jewish Agency, which is the JAs who hired the quote-unquote dancing Israelis. That's in their own report from the interrogation of Paul Kurzberg, where they didn't redact a footnote, which let me Redstone that whole thing. We're not getting to the Israelis yet, but just saying. like that does relate to the passport. There's the other passport that was found was Ziad Al Jara at the Flight 93 crash site, and we can tell you a long story about Al Jara and the suspiciousness about him. But you know, I think I want to save 93 for part 2 because my kids are getting antsy over there. But we're going to be doing this a lot. We can add any other things to 77. Oh gosh, we got to talk about Cheney. Okay, we'll finish up 77, and we're going to have another part 2. Probably 3 or 4, but Norman Mineta passed away today, Adam informed me, and that was the transportation secretary who has this sort of famous testimony of the, I guess is it the POC bunker where they're tracking the plane to say the plane is 30 miles out, 20 miles out, the orders still stand, and Cheney whips his neck around and says, of course it still stands, yeah, or otherwise. So our own transportation secretary who's in the bunker with Dick Cheney is saying that Dick Cheney refused to allow a shoot down of one of the planes, which they claim was Flight 93, but it's not, because you can compare the timelines and everything, and it's definitely Flight 77, plus Flight 93 is 30 miles from what? 20 miles from what? Right? They had 2 chances to hit Flight 77 because, as we explained earlier, it came in at too high an altitude, had to circle back around and go again 2 times, and they didn't shoot it down. And they knew what it was because the planes had already hit in New York, so they knew they were under attack, right? If the Vice President of the United States is refusing to shoot down a hijacked plane, either he's that bad in command, right? He shouldn't even be the person, like, where was Rumsfeld? Where were the Army Joint Chiefs of Staff? Where were all these people hiding? You know, Cheney's the guy, and unfortunately, Mineta is no longer with us. He lived to be 90, but that implicates our own government with either complicity or extreme incompetence. And given Cheney's the rest of his history, I'm going with crooked. And in on it, yeah. So, and that, again, if you don't have an airplane at the Pentagon, then the testimony about Dick Cheney talking about a plane being 30 and 20 miles out doesn't matter. It doesn't exist. Now, I said you can prove with the timelines. I have done that in Empire Unmasked, and I went through Clark's book and Rice's testimony and Mineta's testimony and added up all the dates and the time stamps and stuff and proved that. I won't feel like doing that right now off the top of my head, but it's in a movie I made. So if someone's like, source, Empire Unmasked, because it's got all the sources in the movie. I'd actually have to go back and look at my own stuff. I don't remember all of it, but that's in there. That's available on ANC Report, by the way. Have you ever tried to talk to one of these kooks about, because they'll talk about Dick Cheney, and they'll talk about the missile, and they'll talk about the flight path of 77. And like those, you can't maintain all 3 of those without a plane, right? Have you ever been able to get through to some of these weird?
No, unfortunately not. I have talked to recently a guy who claims to have been a first responder at the Pentagon who claims that no plane had crashed there, but he was actually in his Army barracks at the time of the plane impact of into the Pentagon, and then came about mid-afternoon. And according to him, he basically said there was no jet fuel, there was no plane debris anywhere.
Well, there's no jet fuel.
So
Well, I think it would have burned. You know?
Now, here was my problem, is that I interviewed the Pentagon incident commander himself, James Schwartz. He was the first fire chief to arrive 6 minutes after the plane impact. He took control of the command. And when I told him about this guy, his name is Adam Eisenberg, actually, and he said, I'd never heard of him, but he was there. He has documentation to prove it. But he's making these outrageous claims. And I'm telling him, I have a conversation with him. And then after a while, I'm like, you know what? This guy basically is doing more harm than good because he keeps going on these shows, these, really fringe right-wing shows. And whatnot. The Alex Jones type shows. So I challenged him to it because he made a video challenging Mitch McConnell to a debate about the Pentagon on 9/11.
Because you know he's not going to do that, and he'd be like, "See, Mitch McConnell wouldn't show up."
Exactly. So I made a video like 3 days ago, basically saying, I won't, I'll debate you instead. I never did this to anybody. I don't do that, but I did it for him, and he went. I'm not gonna. I'll save you the banalities he had for me, but basically, he said, "What would be the medium for it?" And I said, "Well, I took out all like yourself and everything because he wouldn't agree to that." But I mentioned Reed Coverdale. I said he's not a 9/11 guy. He's basically fair. He'll do it. If I asked him to, he probably would do it. And he said that, how much time would you give me? I said, how about 10 minutes a round? We'll do 3 rounds. He goes, no, I need more time. I said, how about 20 minutes a round? He goes, no, I need more time. I said, you know what? You can have unlimited time. I'll give you whatever you want, and I'll only need 30 minutes. 30 minutes to your unlimited. And he basically is still up in the air. I blocked him everywhere, though. I won't talk with him. He basically harassed me, called me, all this and that. I don't deal with that. So, yeah. So I just like you, for years, you've been doing it longer than I have, years and years of trying to reach one person. And I don't know if I...
Here's what's cool is you could reach people who haven't been kookified yet. But what happens is when somebody has bit into the kook sandwich, they go and run and tell it on the mountain. They go and tell everybody they know they think it misled the Pentagon or whatever. Then it makes them look like an idiot if they suddenly go, oh, it wasn't plane after all. Like their ego's too invested because they dogmatically beat this into people. They think they're so special and have the inside information because they saw a video on YouTube or something. And they go and tell all their friends and family and coworkers. And so for them to walk that back means they have to admit that they got duped, which is something a lot of people can't do. And so they're too invested. But if you talk to someone that hasn't heard the kook stuff, I've never had a problem. Like I've explained 9/11 to people, even like they kind of heard but rejected the kook stuff. And they go, you're not kooky at all. This actually makes sense. But they're still like, well, I don't know about it. Because I'm like, well, if you want to know all about it, either watch my film or you just sit here and I'll talk for the next 5 or 6 hours. Because it's a really big, complicated thing. But it's all provable. And if they ask for documents, I'm like, here's that, here's this. As we talked about the JS report and Pent Bomb report and FOIA requests that I've done and have and others. It's all there. It's just connecting the dots. And I guess we'll save Hamburg for later because that'll get in 93. But since I alluded to it in this one, you will see the U.S. government is unwilling to let key witnesses testify to get other Al-Qaeda members convicted that the German authorities arrested. And we'll be talking about that. The Hamburg cell goes into what you were talking about. I don't remember if it was now or in our little pre-conversation with the NSA not sharing information with the Yemen hub, with the CIA, and how they had Bin Laden's phone tapped. And there's a lot to this. So we'll talk about Hamburg in 93, and then we're going to get into the World Trade Centers. And I don't know. We'll just see where the conversation goes. But I'm hoping to cover all 4 flights and all the hijackers. But I hope this has been fruitful for the audience, and I will take questions now. And I'll talk for a minute while you have time to think of questions, because there is a lag between Odysee and now. We did get 2, actually 3. Deluxe 24/7 says, would you say that 9/11 was allowed to happen? I'm going to read them all and then we'll answer them. Chip Walker says, how did the guys who worked on the sprinklers at WCT get away? They didn't. They got arrested. Lone Star Texan 1379. Awesome to see you two tackling this topic. Thanks to you both, Diagonalon. Now we go over to Odysee. And let's see. Rise to Liberty podcast says, seeing you two together is mind-blowing. What is the most misunderstood thing about 9/11? Oh, that's a good question. Viva 80. Oh, we got that. Free State Jake, anyone check on some sketchy shipments going in from the New York port via the New York Port Authority before 9? I'm going to cut it off for those questions because you can ask your own questions right now. And again, I hope that was fruitful. We're on Odysee, we're on Entropy. Rumble live is very smooth. So if it depends on your area, it seems like. If it's a little rough on Odysee or VK, check it out on Rumble. Rumble's seems to be better for live streams regardless of location. I had one from Hexkin Tony 1776 said Merca. One from Mikey with 25 says, welcome back, Rye. Thank you. Thanks for noticing. Yes, I was gone for a long time. We're doing the August vacation. As you know, Japan schools are year round. This is the only time the kids are out, and they got family in different countries. So, you know, that's what I was doing. Was working from Substack there also. So, oh, there's a new version of Odysee available. Well, I'm not going to refresh that because that might mess up this stream, but maybe that'll maybe that's what we need for the next one. Checking Entropy 2. Entropy is what it is. Okay, well, Fitzgerald and I are going to be talking about the Hamburg cell next, and probably, well, we'll get into what happened in Yemen, and we'll get into the 93 and Ziad al-Jarrah and all that. Maybe. Depends. There's a lot there. This is a complicated topic, an event, and you know the really juicy stuff is coming, but you got to build a foundation. You got to know where these men came from, what they're doing, inconsistencies. Why weren't they arrested here, and here? Because it's not like the smoking gun is like, this one thing. There are a couple of those, actually. But it's when you put it all together. How could you be so incompetent? And then, you know, I can lay out the evidence and you can decide, well, yeah, our government's just that dumb. Maybe. But just like the WMDs in Iraq, and you see a lot of intent that, no, this isn't a screw-up. And we'll be getting into that. But anyway, if you have any other questions, put it in now. Otherwise, I'm going to have lunch with my wife. So, let's see. Somebody asked me, was it you that posted a video bit of a soldier getting hit by a stone? It was brilliant if it was. I vaguely remember an Israeli getting hit in the face with a rock. And I said I felt sorry for the stone. That okay, yeah, I think so. It's with the Thug Life tire was in that video, as well as the Toasty Bagels, where they grabbed the Palestinian flag that had a bomb in the flagpole and they brought it back, and boom, 6 of them got it at once. It's hard for me to sympathize with those guys, considering what they'd just been doing prior to that with sniper rifles, shooting kids in the nuts and the knees. And it's just nasty. And like, I wish none of it was happening. I mean, Hamas does a lot of fucked up things too, but they didn't exist for the first 35 years of the occupation. You can't start a story in the middle and go, well, we're reacting to Hamas rockets. But no, you're not. You had a bunch of terrorists create a state with umpteen terrorist acts throughout the 30s and 40s. Got a film on that, by the way. I think we're at 34% on the financing. We're just doing 3 at once because I did a film about how essentially Israel is selling U.S. tech, especially with fighter jets, to the Chinese, who are then reverse engineering and da-da-da. And given the situation with Taiwan and West Taiwan, which some people call China, pretty pertinent information there. That might be the one released first. And also the film about the new colonialism in Africa, which is a template, really. I took Zambia as an example, if you know about the copper mines in Glencore and all that. Is I get all these questions like, why is this and that African nation poor when they have umpteen resources and da-da-da-da. And, well, yeah, I can tell you why. And so we have that film. I was going to extend that into Biafran War in Nigeria, because that's a crucial history to understand what's going on in the most populated place in Africa. But I found some pretty good documentaries on it that have already been made, so I didn't have to do it. So let's defer there. But yeah, we have our Africa film, our How Terrorists Formed a Nation film on the history of Israel's beginnings, as well as the more modern stuff, Philip Nuzet and all that, and the not so secret wholesale of American trade secrets to the Chinese by our greatest ally. And that's all on ancreport.com. If you want to donate, you can. We're, at least a third of the way there last time I looked. And again, as far as 9/11 goes, I'll do interviews about it. I will talk about it on panels. I have almost no interest in arguing with kooks about, missiles and planes and stuff. I'm out of energy for that. I can't. I'm not going to waste my day playing defense. I'd rather just explain what happened, the best of my knowledge, and then you can argue with that if you want. But I'm not going to sit here and waste my day debunking crap that ought to be common sense. And I'm also not going to waste my day, proving I am not Islamophobic or anti-Semitic or whatever. Get a life. Saudi Arabia is a monarchy. It's a state. They do a lot of nasty things. So does the United States. Okay, our CIA has done a lot of horrible things. Mossad has done a lot of horrible things. It's not a reflection of the ethnic majority of the country. That is just so dumb. But God, we have generations of people that are just obsessed with race, sex, sexuality, gender. I'm sick of it. Anyway, it looks like I got all the questions that came in. Just double checking. Be careful about clipping this stuff on TikTok or YouTube. You might get your channel banned. We're not engaging in hate speech or any of that, but it doesn't matter. Truth is hate speech to these people. So anyway, okay, cool. I will see you tomorrow.